The Forgotten Economic Miracle, What 1960s Kenya Can Teach Us Today. Section 1, The Hook and the Legend of the Asian Tigers. There is a famous piece of economic history that feels almost unbelievable today. In the mid-1960s, delegations of technocrats from East Asian nations, including South Korea, traveled to Nairobi. They didn't come to give aid. They came to learn. They came to study Kenya's development blueprints, our civil service, and our booming agricultural model. At independence, Kenya was widely regarded as the economic beacon of sub-Saharan Africa. During our first decade, our economy grew at an astonishing average rate of over 6.5% annually. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving. So, what happened? How did a nation that once stood on the exact same starting line as the Asian Tigers experience such a dramatic economic deceleration in the decades that followed? To fix Kenya's modern economic crisis, we have to look past our current policies and travel back in time. In this video, we are doing a deep dive into Kenya's early economic history, analyzing the brilliant planning of the Kenyatta era and the disciplined early years of the Moi administration to uncover the exact secrets that made our economy thrive, and how we can use them to rescue our future. Section 2, Sessional Paper No. 10 and the Mboya-Kibaki engine. When Kenya attained independence in 1963, the immediate challenge wasn't just building roads, it was defining an identity. The continent was deeply divided by the Cold War, forced to choose between Western capitalism or Soviet communism. Kenya chose a third way, immortalized in Sessional Paper No. 10 of 1965 on African Socialism and its application to planning in Kenya. Designed under the leadership of Economic Planning Minister Tom Mboya and a brilliant young technocrat named Mwai Kibaki, this document became the foundational blueprint of the Kenyan state. It was a masterpiece of pragmatic planning. It rejected rigid ideologies and focused entirely on a single, clear objective, maximizing domestic productivity. The strategy was built on three powerful pillars. First, a mixed economy where the state actively supported the private sector rather than trying to control it. Second, a heavy emphasis on domestic resource mobilization, ensuring that Kenya funded its own growth through savings and domestic investments rather than relying on foreign debt. And third, the absolute prioritization of sectors with the highest immediate return on investment, specifically smallholder agriculture and local manufacturing. Section 3, the Agriculture Revolution and the More Transition. This planning blueprint triggered what historians call the Kenyan Agricultural Miracle. Prior to independence, high-value cash crops like tea, coffee, and pyrethrum were the exclusive monopoly of white settler farmers. The post-independence planning framework aggressively dismantled this monopoly. Through structured land resettlement programs and the creation of robust state marketing boards, millions of indigenous smallholder farmers were integrated into the global cash crop economy. To achieve this, the government didn't just leave things to chance, they engineered specialized institutional engines. They created the Kenya Tea Development Authority, KTDA, to organize smallholder tea farmers into a massive, world-class export force. They commercialized the dairy sector through the Kenya Cooperative Creameries, KCC, ensuring local farmers had a guaranteed, profitable market for their milk. They stabilized food security using the Maize and Produce Board, the precursor to today's NCPB, and funded local coffee expansion through the Coffee Board of Kenya. Because the planning department ensured that farmers were paid promptly and provided with subsidized inputs, cash flowed directly into the rural economy. This domestic wealth naturally funded the growth of local retail, real estate, and manufacturing. The tax base grew organically because the citizens were making money. But planning didn't stop at agriculture. To build local industry, the state established the Industrial and Commercial Development Corporation, ICDC, and the Development Bank of Kenya. These institutions provided affordable capital to local entrepreneurs, birthing iconic domestic manufacturing giants. Because the planning department ensured that parastatals ran like disciplined corporate entities, cash flowed directly into the rural and urban economies. This domestic wealth naturally funded the growth of local retail, real estate, and manufacturing. The tax base grew organically because the citizens were making money. When President Daniel Arap Moi took office in 1978, he inherited a volatile global economy battered by the 1970s oil shocks. Yet, in his early years, from 1978 to the early 1980s, the core machinery of disciplined economic planning held firm. The early Moi administration successfully capitalized on the residual wealth of the famous 1977 global coffee boom, popularly known in Kenyan folklore as the era of Chepcube. The state maintained a highly favorable balance of payments, local industries were heavily protected under import substitution policies, and inflation was kept firmly in check. The engine was working because the structural discipline established in 1965 was still being strictly followed.
Section 4. The decline. Why the engine stalled. But if the start was so magnificent, where did it all go wrong? Why did the Asian tigers accelerate into high-tech industrialization while Kenya's engine began to stall? The economic history reveals two structural failure points that hit from the mid-1980s onward. First was the transition from technocracy to political centralization. As the years progressed, economic planning was steadily decoupled from objective data and placed at the mercy of political survival. Decisions on where to build infrastructure, which industries to fund, and who run state-owned enterprises shifted from qualified economists to politically loyal individuals. Efficiency dropped, corruption crept into the marketing boards, and the agricultural sector, the very foundation of our wealth, began to suffer from mismanagement. Elite institutions like the Kenya Meat Commission, KMC, the Kenya National Trading Corporation, KNTC, then local sugar millers like Mumias Sugar shifted from being efficiently run economic pillars into vehicles of political patronage. Farmers stopped being paid on time, and local production collapsed. Second was the forced adoption of structural adjustment programs, SAPs, by international lenders in the late 80s and 90s. Because our internal economic discipline had weakened, Kenya was forced to aggressively liberalize its markets overnight. Local infant manufacturing industries, which had thrived under early state protection, collapsed under a sudden wave of cheap imports. The state stopped planning for growth and entered a prolonged phase of crisis management. Section 5. Retro Solutions, bringing back the 1965 discipline. So, what can modern Kenya learn from its own golden era? Fixing our economy doesn't require us to copy Western models or drown ourselves in foreign debt, it requires us to remember what we already did right in the 1960s. We must apply 3 retro planning remedies to our modern economy. First, re-establishing domestic resource mobilization. The 1965 blueprint succeeded because it prioritized funding national growth through domestic savings and local capital rather than commercial foreign debt. Modern Kenya must aggressively restructure its fiscal policy to incentivize local savings, reduce our dangerous reliance on external bilateral loans, and ensure that our national development budget is funded by national wealth. Second, aggressive protection of local productivity. Our early economic planners understood that you cannot grow a domestic market if you expose your infant industries to lopsided global competition. We must use targeted tax incentives and strategic trade policies to protect and stimulate local value addition, whether in agro-processing, textile manufacturing, or our burgeoning digital economy. We must tax the imports that compete with our local factories, not the local factories themselves. We must depoliticize and revive our agricultural value addition frameworks, ensuring entities like New KCC, KTDA, and our local cooperative unions operate as world-class, data-driven processors that put money back into the pockets of the producers. We cannot grow a domestic market if you leave smallholder farmers at the mercy of chaotic global supply chains without processing power. Third, restoring the power of the technocratic civil service. The early Kenyan miracle was driven by men like Tom Mboya and the young technocrats who operated with institutional autonomy. We must depoliticize our economic planning institutions. The National Treasury, the State Department for Economic Planning, and our agricultural regulatory boards must be led strictly by econometric data, not political expediency. Section 6, Outro. Kenya's history proves that our capacity for greatness is not a future dream, or it is a historical fact. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We simply need to restore the intellectual rigor, the institutional balance, and the disciplined planning that once made us the envy of the developing world. What are your thoughts on Kenya's early economic history? Do you think reviving the principles of Sessional Paper No. 10 is the key to fixing our current fiscal crisis? Do you think reviving the institutional power of entities like the KTDA, KCC, and the ICDC under strict technocratic rules is the key to fixing our current fiscal crisis? Let's have a structured, respectful discussion in the comment section below. If you want to see how this historical foundation connects to our modern crises at the Treasury, within devolution, and across our infrastructure megaprojects, make sure to watch our complete 3-part economic architecture series right now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next analysis.